Poor girl with her baby gets trapped in an elevator with the CEO, but when the doors open. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. The sound of the crying baby echoed off the polished marble walls of the downtown office tower. Emily Parker clutched her infant daughter, Lily, close to her chest, whispering soft apologies as she hurried toward the elevator. It was nearly 6 o'clock in the evening, the end of a long and punishing day. Her worn-out sneakers squeaked against the gleaming floor, a sharp contrast to the confident footsteps of executives leaving for dinner in tailored suits and glossy heels. Her hair was frizzy from the drizzle outside, her thrift store coat still damp at the edges. She pressed the elevator button and exhaled shakily. Lily whimpered again, tiny fists waving in protest. Emily kissed her daughter's forehead. "Shh, sweetheart, just a few more minutes. Mommy just needs to drop off this last form." The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime. Inside stood a man in a charcoal grey suit, tall and composed, his expression unreadable. Emily hesitated. He looked like someone who never waited for anyone. Still, she stepped in, holding Lily tight. The doors closed, sealing them inside the mirrored box. The hum of machinery filled the silence. Emily shifted nervously, adjusting her diaper bag, which was patched and overstuffed. The man glanced briefly at her reflection, then returned to his phone, his voice low and smooth as he said, "Move the numbers to Friday's report. I will review them tonight." His tone carried authority, calm and absolute. Lily let out a sudden cry, loud and piercing. Emily's heart sank. "I am so sorry," she blurted out, bouncing the baby gently. "She usually sleeps through the evening, I swear." The man said nothing at first, just slipped his phone into his jacket pocket and stared at the elevator panel. Then, with a faint sigh, he said, "No need to apologize. Babies cry." His voice was steady, but his jaw tightened, the faintest sign of discomfort. The elevator shuddered suddenly, jolting them both. The lights flickered, then dimmed to a soft red emergency glow. Emily gasped. The floor indicator froze between levels. "Oh no, please no," she whispered. Lily started to cry harder, frightened by the sudden stop. Emily pressed the emergency button, her voice trembling. "Hello, we are stuck in here." Static crackled through the speaker before a calm voice replied, "Maintenance has been alerted. Please stay calm, ma'am." Emily sank to her knees, rocking Lily to soothe her. The man leaned back against the wall, loosening his tie slightly. "Are you all right?" he asked quietly. She nodded, though her eyes shimmered with panic. "It is just she needs her bottle, and I am out of water. I was going to buy some downstairs." For a moment, he said nothing. Then he reached into his leather briefcase, pulling out a sleek glass water bottle. "Use this," he said, his voice low but firm. Emily hesitated. "I cannot take that. It looks expensive." He met her eyes for the first time, his gaze calm but steady. "It is just water, please." She took it with shaking hands, murmuring thanks. As she prepared the formula, the baby's cries softened to small hiccups. The elevator was silent except for Lily's faint breathing. The man watched quietly, his phone screen lighting his face in the dim glow. For the first time, Emily noticed how tired he looked, like someone carrying more weight than money could fix. He checked the time, then looked at her again. "You work in this building?" She nodded. "Just the temp agency upstairs. I clean the offices after hours." "I see," he said softly, as if filing that away. Minutes stretched into an uneasy calm. Then, faintly, they both heard footsteps and a voice calling through the door. "Sir, are you inside? Mr. Reed?" Emily froze. The name echoed like a revelation. Mr. Reed, the CEO of Meridian Holdings, the man who owned half the tower. He looked down at her, and for the first time, smiled faintly. "Looks like help is here." Emily clutched Lily close, unaware that when those doors opened, her life was about to change forever. When the elevator doors finally slid open, Emily blinked against the sudden flood of light from the hallway. 2 building technicians and a uniformed security guard stood waiting. Behind them, a sharply dressed assistant with a headset rushed forward. "Mr. Reed, are you all right?" she asked. eyes wide with concern. The man beside Emily gave a brief nod. "We are fine. Make sure maintenance checks the emergency systems." They failed midway. His tone was calm but carried authority that made everyone straighten instantly. Emily shifted Lily in her arms, realizing she was standing next to someone far above her world. The CEO of Meridian Holdings, the man whose name she saw printed on every floor directory plaque. She stammered, "Thank you for the water, sir, and for staying calm. I really—" "No need," he interrupted gently, adjusting his cufflinks. "I'm glad you and your daughter are safe." He looked at Lily, whose tiny hand clutched the edge of her mother's coat, now quiet after the ordeal. "She is brave," he added softly, and for a fleeting moment, the hint of a smile reached his eyes. Before Emily could respond, the assistant stepped closer. "Sir, your car is waiting downstairs. You have the board meeting at 6:30. He gave a short nod, then turned back to Emily. "Do you have a way home?" She hesitated, glancing down at her worn-out shoes. "The bus stops a few blocks away." Without another word, he pulled a sleek black card from his wallet and handed it to her. "For a cab," he said simply. Emily froze, shaking her head quickly. "I cannot take this, sir. I will be fine." "It is late," he said quietly. "Take it. Consider it repayment for the water." His voice was steady, leaving no room for refusal. She finally accepted, murmuring a thank you. He gave her one last look, something unreadable flickering across his face, then walked away surrounded by his team. Emily stood there long after he left, the elevator still open behind her, her heart racing. Later that night, after putting Lily to sleep, she sat at her small kitchen table in her one-bedroom apartment. The city lights flickered faintly through the cracked blinds. The black business card lay on the table beside her cold cup of coffee. It read, "Alexander Reed, Chief Executive Officer, Meridian Holdings." She traced the embossed letters with her fingertip, unsure if the entire encounter had been real. She whispered to herself, "What are the odds?" Her phone buzzed, snapping her back. It was a message from the temp agency. "Tomorrow morning, report to Meridian Holdings. New assignment." Emily blinked. "Meridian Holdings," she repeated under her breath, staring at the card. Coincidence, she thought. Just coincidence. The next morning, the air smelled of rain and new beginnings. Emily arrived early, wearing her cleanest blouse and the same coat from last night, freshly dried. The lobby gleamed under bright morning light, filled with people in crisp suits and heels, clicking against marble floors. She clutched Lily's small photo in her pocket for courage. The receptionist directed her to the 12th floor for orientation. As she rode the elevator again, her heart pounded. The mirrored walls reflected a tired but determined woman, not the frightened one from last night. When the doors opened, she stepped into a bright office space where an HR manager greeted her warmly. "Emily Parker, right? Welcome. You will assist with inventory documentation in the finance department. Just a temporary project, but it could lead to something longer." Emily smiled politely, trying to hide her nervousness. The morning passed quietly as she organized files, typed reports, and answered calls. Around noon, a ripple of motion swept through the office. People stood a little straighter, whispering. "He is here," someone murmured. Emily looked up from her desk and froze. Alexander Reed walked in, speaking with two executives. His presence filled the room effortlessly. He was dressed in a navy suit today, calm and composed as ever. She ducked her head, hoping he would not notice her. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. His gaze moved across the room, casual at first, then paused. Their eyes met. Recognition flashed. A faint smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. He turned to his assistant. "Hold my calls for 10 minutes." The assistant nodded. He walked toward Emily's desk, his footsteps slow but certain. The office went quiet. "Miss Parker," he said evenly, "we meet again." She stood quickly, heart pounding. "Mr. Reed, I did not know I would be assigned here." He studied her face for a moment, then said softly, "Neither did I, but I am glad you are." He glanced at the stack of neatly organized papers beside her. "You have an eye for detail." "It is part of the job," she replied nervously. He nodded slightly. "It is a rare quality. Finish early today. I would like to discuss something with you tomorrow morning." "Discuss?" she echoed, confused. "Yes," he said simply, turning to leave. "Something that might interest you." As he disappeared into his office, Emily stood frozen, her mind spinning. She did not know if this was luck, fate, or something in between. But deep down, she sensed that the moment those elevator doors opened, her life had quietly stepped into a different world, one that would test not only her courage, but also his humanity. The following morning, the sky was washed in soft grey light as Emily arrived at Meridian Holdings 15 minutes early. She took a steadying breath before stepping through the revolving doors. The air inside smelled faintly of coffee and polished steel, a scent she was beginning to associate with nervous energy. She checked her reflection in the glass wall, adjusted her hair, and reminded herself to stay calm. She had not slept much the night before, her mind replaying every word Alexander Reed had said. Something that might interest you. What could he possibly mean? He was the CEO, and she was just a temporary assistant. Still, a part of her was curious, another part afraid. She needed this job, and any mistake could cost her the only stable income she had found since Lily was born. The receptionist greeted her kindly, handing her a visitor badge with a smile. "Mr. Reed asked me to send you to his office when you arrive." Her stomach fluttered. She made her way to the top floor, where the air seemed quieter, heavier somehow. The elevator doors opened to a wide hallway lined with abstract paintings. She approached the glass door marked Executive Office. Through it, she saw Alexander Reed standing by the window, sunlight reflecting off the skyline behind him. He turned as she entered. "Good morning, Miss Parker," he said, his tone formal yet warm. "Please, have a seat." She sat, clutching her folder tightly. "You said you wanted to discuss something." He nodded, folding his hands on the desk. "Yes, I reviewed your file last night. You have accounting experience." "A few years," she said carefully. "Before the layoffs, I worked at a small firm. I took the temp job after my daughter was born." "Lily," he said quietly, surprising her. "You mentioned her name last night in the elevator." Her cheeks flushed. "I did not mean to overshare." "You did not," he replied. "It is rare to meet someone who speaks with honesty instead of calculation." His gaze held hers for a moment that felt longer than it was. Then he continued, "One of our teams is short-staffed. I want you to assist with a 3-week audit. It pays better than your current role." Emily blinked, unsure if she had heard correctly. "Me? Work on an audit team?" "You are qualified," he said simply. "And sometimes, people just need a chance to prove it." Gratitude flooded her chest, mingled with disbelief. "Thank you, Mr. Reed. I will not let you down." "I know you will not," he said. Then, almost as an afterthought, he added, "Do not thank me yet. It will be demanding." She nodded. "I am used to demanding." A flicker of respect crossed his face. "That much is clear." He stood, signaling the meeting was over. "Report to the finance floor this afternoon." "And Miss Parker?" She paused at the door. "Yes, sir?" "Do not rush home tonight. You might want to look outside around 7 o'clock. Confused, she nodded and left. The rest of the day blurred in a rhythm of data entry, emails, and the hum of office chatter. At exactly 7, she was still at her desk, finishing a report, when she noticed movement outside the large window. Down below, in the courtyard, a small pop-up stage had been set up. Strings of warm white lights glowed against the darkening sky. A few employees gathered, murmuring with curiosity. "It is the company's annual appreciation night," a co-worker explained. "Usually, it is for executives only, but this year, he said everyone's invited." Emily looked down again, her breath catching. Alexander stood near the center, speaking into a microphone. "This company is built on more than numbers and profit," he said, his voice calm, carrying through the speakers. "It is built on people who show up even when no one notices. Tonight is for them." Applause spread through the crowd. Emily felt an unexpected warmth rise in her chest. She thought about her long nights, the endless bills, the quiet sacrifices no one saw, and for the first time in years, she felt seen. Later, as she prepared to leave, she found a folded note on her desk. No signature, just a single sentence written in neat handwriting. "Keep showing up. It matters more than you think." She knew exactly who had left it. That night, walking home with the note tucked safely in her pocket, Emily felt something she had not felt in a very long time, hope. And somewhere across the city, Alexander Reed stood at his office window, watching the lights fade from the courtyard, wondering why the memory of a trembling young mother and her baby in a broken elevator refused to leave his mind. By the end of her first week on the audit team, Emily could hardly believe how much had changed. Every morning she arrived at Meridian Holdings before sunrise, balancing a coffee cup in one hand and a folder of spreadsheets in the other. She learned quickly, absorbing every detail like her life depended on it. In many ways, it did. The pay increase covered Lily's daycare and a few overdue bills. For the first time since her daughter was born, Emily no longer woke up wondering which necessity she would have to skip that week. Her colleagues respected her quiet efficiency, but some whispered about the CEO's sudden interest in a temp worker. She ignored them. She had worked too hard to let gossip threaten the only stability she had. On Friday afternoon, she stayed late, finalizing a report the team needed before the weekend. The office lights were dimmed except for the glow from her monitor. Outside, the city pulsed with the rhythm of Friday night, but Emily remained at her desk, focused. She did not notice Alexander Reed standing at the doorway until his reflection appeared in the glass beside her. "You are still here," he said softly. She startled slightly, turning around. "I wanted to make sure this was finished before Monday." "You could have left hours ago," he replied. "The others did." "I do not mind," she said, trying to sound casual. "It helps me think." He walked closer, setting a cup of coffee on her desk. "Decaf. You look like you could use it." She hesitated before accepting it. "Thank you, sir." "Alexander," he corrected gently. At least after office hours, his tone was calm, almost teasing. She smiled faintly, unsure how to respond. He leaned against the edge of the desk, looking at the screen. "You are thorough. This section on vendor discrepancies, it caught something my managers missed." "It just looked odd," she said, shrugging. "Numbers tell stories. You just have to listen." "Not everyone listens," he said quietly, almost to himself. For a moment, silence filled the room. The soft hum of computers, the faint aroma of coffee, the city lights reflected in the glass, it felt like a fragile pause in both their lives. Then his phone buzzed. He checked the screen and sighed. "I have to take this, but before I go, Miss Parker, do not forget to rest. You cannot fix the world in one night." She nodded, watching him leave. When he was gone, she exhaled, realizing she had been holding her breath. That weekend, she spent Saturday morning with Lily at the park. The crisp autumn air carried the smell of fallen leaves and popcorn from a nearby stand. Lily giggled as she chased a pigeon across the path, her small boots crunching against the gravel. Emily sat on the bench, smiling, when her phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number appeared. "Do not forget Monday's audit presentation. You are presenting with me." Her stomach flipped. Only one person could have sent that: Alexander Reed. Monday arrived faster than she expected. Standing beside him in the conference room felt surreal. The long glass table reflected their images as the board members listened intently. Emily explained her findings with calm precision, her voice steady despite the pounding in her chest. Alexander watched her, occasionally nodding, letting her take the lead. When she finished, there was a brief silence before one of the senior directors said, "Impressive work. Very insightful." Another added, "She has a sharp eye." Alexander smiled slightly. "I told you she was worth listening to." The praise was quiet but meaningful. When the meeting ended, the directors filed out, leaving the two of them alone. Emily turned to him, still processing the moment. "Thank you for trusting me to do that." "You earned it," he said simply, "and you handled the room better than some of my managers." She smiled. "I was terrified." "Good," he said, amused. "Fear keeps you sharp, but next time, I expect confidence instead." As he walked toward the door, he paused. "There will be a company event next week, a charity gala. I want you there." She blinked in surprise. "Me? That is for executives." "It is for everyone," he corrected. "Besides, I think you deserve to see what your work contributes to." Before she could respond, he was gone again, leaving her standing in the echo of his words. That night, as she tucked Lily into bed, Emily whispered softly, "We are going to need to find a dress, sweetheart." She looked at her daughter's sleeping face, a small smile tugging at her lips. For the first time in a long while, the future did not seem impossible. It seemed like the beginning of something she could finally believe in. The week leading up to the charity gala passed in a blur. Between long hours at work and caring for Lily, Emily barely had time to breathe. Still, each evening, as she rocked her daughter to sleep, her thoughts drifted back to Alexander Reed. His calm confidence lingered in her mind, the way he had trusted her in front of the entire board, the quiet assurance in his voice when he said she belonged at the gala. Part of her wanted to believe it. Another part feared she would stand out for all the wrong reasons. By Friday evening, she was staring at her reflection in the small mirror above her kitchen sink. The dress she had borrowed from a kind neighbor was simple, soft blue, with a modest neckline and a faint shimmer that caught the light. She smoothed the fabric nervously. "What do you think, Lily?" she asked with a small smile. Her daughter, sitting on the couch surrounded by stuffed animals, clapped her tiny hands. "Mommy, pretty," she said proudly. The words made Emily laugh, easing the tension that had been building all day. "You are my best cheerleader," she whispered, kissing her forehead. The night of the gala arrived crisp and cool. The event was held at the Grand Meridian Hotel, a towering glass structure that reflected the city lights like diamonds. Emily's cab pulled up to the entrance, where photographers and guests in evening gowns gathered under golden chandeliers. She hesitated for a moment, clutching her small purse. The last time she had seen this kind of luxury was through the screen of her old laptop, watching fundraising videos she could never imagine attending. A valet opened the door for her, offering a polite smile. "Welcome, ma'am." Inside, the ballroom shimmered with light. Soft jazz played in the background, and waiters glided through the crowd with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvre. Emily stepped carefully across the marble floor, her heart racing. She was surrounded by people whose lives seemed so far removed from hers: executives, philanthropists, and celebrities, mingling effortlessly. Then she saw him. Alexander stood near the stage, speaking with a group of donors. He wore a black tuxedo that seemed almost sculpted for him, his expression composed and assured. When his eyes met hers, his demeanor softened. He excused himself from the group and walked toward her. "You made it," he said, his voice lower than the music but still steady. "I was beginning to think you changed your mind." "I almost did," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "I do not exactly fit in here." He smiled faintly. "You belong here as much as anyone else. Tonight is not about status, it is about purpose." He offered his arm. "Come on, I will introduce you to a few people." She hesitated, then slipped her hand onto his arm. The simple gesture made her heart thud in her chest. He introduced her to several board members, each of whom greeted her kindly, though some with polite curiosity. "So this is the young woman from the audit," one of them remarked. "Alexander has been praising your attention to detail." Emily smiled shyly, unsure what to say. Alexander simply replied, "Her work saved us from a six-figure loss last quarter." The room went quiet for a second before polite applause rippled around them. She felt her cheeks flush. "You did not have to say that," she whispered, when they stepped aside. "It is the truth," he said simply. "You should not hide from it." As the night went on, she began to relax, letting the music and laughter wash over her. Near the end of the evening, the lights dimmed, and Alexander took the stage for his speech. "This company's success is not built by the few at the top," he began, his voice firm but sincere. "It is built by those who work quietly, who give everything they have even when no one notices. Tonight, I want to thank them, the ones who remind us what integrity looks like." His gaze found her across the crowd, and for a heartbeat, it felt as if he was speaking only to her. When the event ended, he joined her near the exit. "How was your first gala?" "Overwhelming," she admitted, smiling. "But kind of beautiful." He nodded. "I'm glad you think so. You should see yourself the way I see you, Miss Parker." Before she could ask what he meant, someone called his name, pulling him away. Emily stood there, her pulse quickening. As she stepped into the cool night air, her borrowed dress catching the wind, she realized something had shifted between them, something quiet but undeniable, like a door slowly opening to a world she never thought she would enter. The days following the gala carried a strange new energy at Meridian Holdings. People who had once passed Emily without notice now greeted her with nods and smiles. Her quiet success story had spread through the office like sunlight through glass. Yet, while she appreciated the recognition, Emily remained grounded. Every morning she still packed Lily's lunch, caught the same early bus, and reminded herself that gratitude was safer than expectation. One afternoon, as she sorted through invoices, Alexander's assistant appeared at her desk. "Mr. Reed would like to see you in his office," she said. Emily's pulse quickened. She smoothed her skirt and followed her through the corridor. When she entered the room, Alexander stood near the window, sleeves rolled up, reviewing a stack of reports. "Come in, Miss Parker," he said without looking up. "I have a question about these figures from the charity fund." She stepped forward, explaining the discrepancies and how she had balanced them. He listened intently, nodding occasionally. When she finished, he closed the folder. "You continue to surprise me," he said quietly. "You see details most people overlook." She smiled nervously. "It is just part of the job, sir." "No," he corrected, meeting her gaze. "It is more than that. You care about the outcome. That is rare." For a moment, silence lingered between them. The city stretched endlessly beyond the glass, the afternoon sun painting golden light across his desk. Then his phone buzzed. He frowned. "I have to attend a client dinner tonight. Unfortunately, my assistant is out sick. Would you mind accompanying me to take notes? It will be casual, nothing formal." Her heart skipped. "Me? Are you sure?" "You handled the boardroom," he said calmly. "You can handle dinner." That evening, she met him at a quiet restaurant downtown. The atmosphere was elegant but warm, filled with low music and the scent of rosemary and roasted garlic. Emily wore a modest black dress, her hair pulled back neatly. Alexander greeted her with a nod. "Relax," he said as they sat a day. "It is just dinner." The conversation with the clients flowed easily, focused on community investment projects. Alexander's leadership was effortless, his words confident but thoughtful. Emily took notes quietly, occasionally offering insights when asked. When the meeting ended, the clients departed with firm handshakes and promises to follow up. As they stepped outside, the city air felt cool against her skin. "You handled that well," Alexander said as they walked toward his car. "Most people would have been intimidated." "I was," she admitted honestly, "but I kept reminding myself it was just numbers and people." He chuckled softly. "That is exactly what business is, numbers and people." He opened the car door for her, a simple gesture that felt unexpectedly kind. On the drive back, the conversation turned personal. He asked about Lily, her favorite things, her age, what made her laugh. Emily spoke easily for once, her voice warming as she described her daughter's obsession with drawing suns on every scrap of paper she could find. Alexander listened with quiet interest. "You are raising her on your own?" he asked gently. She nodded. "Since the day she was born." His expression softened. "That takes strength." "Sometimes it just takes necessity," she replied, smiling faintly. "When you have someone who depends on you completely, you learn what you are capable of." The car slowed to a stop in front of her apartment building. The streetlight above flickered softly. She unbuckled her seatbelt, turning to thank him. "I appreciate you bringing me tonight. It was unexpected." "Good unexpected, I hope," he said, his tone light. "Yes," she admitted. "Very good." For a brief moment, their eyes met in the quiet hum of the engine. There was something unspoken in the space between them, fragile but real. She broke the silence first. "Good night, Mr. Reed." "Good night, Emily," he said, using her first name for the first time. She stepped out into the cool night, her heart unsteady but full. Upstairs, when she peeked into Lily's room, her daughter was asleep, a crayon still clutched in her tiny hand. Emily smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Somewhere far above, in a penthouse bathed in city light, Alexander stood by his window, thinking about the woman who had walked into his elevator by chance and somehow managed to change the rhythm of his perfectly ordered world. The following week began with a storm that painted the city in shades of grey. Rain streaked across the office windows as Emily worked quietly at her desk, reviewing a complex report. The steady rhythm of droplets against the glass made the day feel slower, heavier. Around mid-afternoon, Alexander appeared beside her, holding a folded umbrella still wet from the weather outside. "Come to the conference room," he said simply. "There is something I would like you to see." She followed him down the hallway, trying not to let her curiosity show. Inside, the long table was covered with sketches and charts. "These are the plans for a new community initiative," he explained. "Affordable housing, daycare programs, scholarships. I want Meridian to fund something that actually changes lives, but I need someone who understands what those lives look like." His eyes met hers, steady and intent. "You have lived that reality, Miss Parker. I would like your input." The words struck her harder than she expected. "You want my opinion?" she asked quietly. "I'm not sure I'm qualified to make decisions like this." "You are exactly qualified," he replied. "That is why I am asking." She took a breath, moving closer to study the papers. There were maps, budgets, and architectural outlines. "If this is really for single parents," she said slowly, "you should include flexible daycare hours. Most programs close by 6, but people working double shifts have no chance to make it." He nodded thoughtfully, jotting it down. "What else?" She hesitated, then added, "Housing vouchers that cover deposits, transportation assistance, and maybe mentorship programs for women re-entering the workforce. Sometimes, opportunity alone is not enough. You need someone to believe in you." He looked at her for a long moment, then said quietly, "You are right." For the next hour, they worked side by side, building a vision that felt both practical and human. It was the first time Emily forgot who he was, the CEO, the man in the $1,000 suit, and saw instead someone listening, someone trying to understand. When they finished, Alexander leaned back, studying her with quiet respect. "You have a gift, Emily," he said. "You see people the way numbers never could." She smiled shyly, a warmth rising in her chest. "Maybe because I used to be one of those numbers." His gaze softened, but before he could reply, his phone rang. The brief moment between them broke like thin glass. He answered, his tone shifting back to business. "Yes, I will handle it." When he hung up, he exhaled slowly. "That was the board. They want to move forward quickly. I will need you at the next meeting to present these ideas." Her eyes widened. "Me? Present?" "Yes," he said firmly. "They need to hear the truth from someone who has lived it." She nodded, though nerves twisted in her stomach. "All right, I will do my best." "You always do," he replied, his voice low. Later that evening, as Emily walked home, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening under the streetlights. Her mind replayed the day the way he had listened, the way his expression changed when she spoke. When she reached her apartment, Lily ran to greet her, holding up a drawing. "Look, Mummy, it is you and me." The picture showed two stick figures holding hands under a bright yellow sundae. Emily laughed softly, kneeling down. "It is beautiful, sweetheart." She pinned it on the fridge beside the overdue bills and the grocery list. As she made dinner, her phone buzzed. A new message appeared from Alexander. "Thank you for today. Your perspective reminded me why I started this company." She stared at the words for a long time, feeling something stir deep inside her. Gratitude, admiration, and a fragile hope she could not quite name. She typed back carefully, "Thank you for listening." For a few seconds, there was no reply. Then 3 dots appeared, blinking. "Good night, Emily," his message finally read. She smiled to herself, setting the phone aside. Outside, the storm had passed, but inside her heart, something had quietly begun to grow, something both terrifying and beautiful, like sunlight breaking through after a long rain. The following days felt like a quiet rhythm that Emily had come to treasure. Each morning began with Lily's laughter echoing through their small apartment and ended with long hours at Meridian Holdings, where she continued refining the proposal for the community initiative. The upcoming board presentation weighed heavily on her mind, but she found comfort in knowing Alexander believed in her. One afternoon, as she organized her notes in the conference room, he entered with a folder in hand. "The board meeting has been moved up," he said. "It is tomorrow morning." Emily froze, gripping her pen tightly. "Tomorrow? I thought we had more time." "We do not," he replied calmly. "But you are ready." His confidence both steadied and unnerved her. "What if I say something wrong?" she asked quietly. "Then you will correct it," he said, smiling faintly. "You have earned your place in that room, Emily. Trust yourself." The next morning arrived far too soon. The boardroom was larger than she remembered, lined with polished wood and glass walls that overlooked the skyline. 12 executives sat around the table, their expressions unreadable. Alexander stood beside her, introducing her with the ease of someone who commanded attention without raising his voice. "Miss Parker has been instrumental in developing the framework for our new initiative," he said. "She will be presenting her findings." Her heart pounded as she stepped forward, clutching her notes. For a moment, the words tangled in her throat. Then she saw Lily's crayon drawing tucked inside her folder, a reminder of why she was doing this. Her voice steadied. She spoke about working parents struggling to make ends meet, about daycare hours that forced mothers to choose between income and safety, about the invisible courage it took to keep going. The room grew silent. When she finished, Alexander turned to the board. "This is the kind of impact Meridian should stand for," he said firmly. "Numbers matter, but people matter more." A few board members nodded, Others exchanged glances. Finally, the chairwoman spoke. "The proposal is ambitious, but so is our responsibility. Let us proceed with it." Relief washed over Emily like a wave. As the meeting ended, Alexander leaned close and whispered, "You did it." She smiled, whispering back, "We did it." Later that evening, as she was packing her things, she found a small envelope on her desk with her name written in elegant handwriting. Inside was a note, "For someone who reminded this company what humanity looks like." Beneath it was a gift card to a bookstore and a handwritten line that made her heart stop. "Take your daughter somewhere special this weekend. She deserves to see the world her mother is changing." The signature was simple, Alexander. That Saturday, Emily kept her promise. She took Lily to the city zoo, watching her daughter's eyes widen at every animal exhibit. They shared ice cream, laughed at the seals, and took pictures near the giraffe enclosure. For a few hours, the world felt lighter. While Lily napped in her stroller, Emily sat on a park bench, the autumn sunlight warm on her skin. She took out her phone, scrolling to Alexander's number, her thumb hovering over the screen. She wanted to say thank you, not just for the note, but for seeing her, for giving her back a piece of herself she thought was gone. Before she could type, her phone buzzed. It was him. "How was the zoo?" the message read. She smiled, shaking her head in disbelief. "You really do not miss anything, do you?" she typed back. His reply came quickly. "Not when it matters." She stared at the words for a long time, the corners of her lips curling into a quiet smile. Somewhere deep inside, she knew their connection was growing into something more than gratitude, something unspoken but undeniable. Yet even as her heart fluttered, she reminded herself to stay grounded. Alexander Reed was a man from a different world, wealthy, powerful, and unreachable. And she was just Emily Parker, a single mother trying to survive. Still, as Lily stirred beside her and the sun dipped below the skyline, Emily allowed herself one simple truth. For the first time in years, she did not feel invisible. She felt seen, valued, and alive. And it had all started with a broken elevator and a stranger who chose to care. Monday morning arrived with the crisp chill of early winter. The streets shimmered with frost, and the sun cast pale light over the skyline as Emily made her way to the office. She felt different now, more confident, more certain of her place at Meridian Holdings. Her presentation had been a success, and the new community program had officially launched with her as the project coordinator. It was still surreal to her how quickly life had changed. Only months ago, she had been counting coins at a convenience store. Now, she worked directly under Alexander Reed. When she entered the building, a few co-workers greeted her warmly. She smiled, grateful for their kindness, but she still felt whispers follow her quiet speculation about her sudden rise and her closeness with the CEO. She ignored it, reminding herself that hard work had brought her here, not favoritism. That morning, Alexander called her into his office to review progress reports. The room smelled faintly of coffee and cedar polish. He stood by the window, reading through a file. "The first phase of the project begins next week," he said without looking up. "I want you to oversee the site visit personally." Emily blinked in surprise. "Me? You could send one of the senior managers." "I could," he said, finally meeting her eyes. "But I trust you more. You see things they do not." His voice carried quiet conviction that made her chest tighten. "All right," she said softly. "I will make sure everything runs smoothly." He nodded, a faint smile crossing his lips. "I know you will." For a moment, silence settled between them, broken only by the faint hum of the city below. Then his assistant knocked, announcing the arrival of a business partner. Alexander straightened his tie and turned professional once again. "Thank you, Miss Parker. That will be all for now." She gathered her papers and left the room, her pulse quickening as she closed the door behind her. That evening, as she left the office, the streets glittered with Christmas lights. The world outside felt alive with warmth and color. She stopped by a small bakery to buy cookies for Lily and thought about the past few months, the strange twist of fate that had brought her here. As she walked home, her phone buzzed with a message. It was from Alexander. "Long day. Make sure you get some rest tonight." She smiled at the screen, typing back, "You too, Mr. Reed." His reply came seconds later. "Alexander." The single word made her heart skip. That weekend, she took Lily to the construction site for the new community center. The air smelled of fresh lumber and concrete dust. Workers moved carefully, setting up the foundation. One of the foremen approached her. "You are the project coordinator, right?" Mr. Reed said to expect you. Emily nodded, putting on her hard hat. "Yes, I am here to review safety measures and progress reports." As she walked through the site, she felt a strange sense of pride. Each brick, each beam represented hope for families like hers, people who had fought to survive. She knelt to take a few notes when she noticed something odd, a section of the blueprint that did not match the on-site structure. Her brow furrowed. "This area was supposed to include wheelchair access," she said to the foreman. "Why is it missing?" The man looked uncomfortable. "Budget cuts. The board said to postpone that feature." "Postpone accessibility," she repeated, frowning. "That is not acceptable. We promised inclusivity." She took pictures and sent them directly to Alexander with a brief message. "We need to talk." Within an hour, he called. "You are right," he said after she explained. "That was never approved by me. Thank you for catching it." "I just did what was right," she said quietly. "You always do," he replied. There was a pause, then his voice softened. "Emily, sometimes I forget what this company was supposed to stand for. Then you remind me." She smiled, her voice barely a whisper. "Maybe that is why fate put me in that elevator." For a long moment, neither of them spoke, both remembering the night their worlds collided. As she hung up and looked around at the half-built center, Emily felt something shift inside her, a deeper bond forming, built not on status or charity, but on shared purpose. What had begun as an accident was slowly becoming something neither of them had expected: trust, respect, and the fragile beginning of something that might one day be called love. The first snow of winter arrived the following week, blanketing the city in white. Emily stood by her apartment window early that morning, holding a cup of coffee as she watched Lily press her tiny hand against the frosted glass, drawing little hearts in the mist. The warmth of home contrasted with the world outside, but her thoughts were already on work. The community center project was gaining momentum, and Alexander had asked her to accompany him to a press conference later that day. It would be the first time she appeared publicly as part of his leadership team. The idea made her both proud and anxious. By the time she reached the office, reporters were already gathering in the lobby. Cameras flashed as employees hurried past. When she entered the main hall, Alexander was reviewing his speech with his assistant. He looked up the moment he saw her. "You are right on time," he said, his expression softening. "Are you ready?" "As ready as I will ever be," she said, smiling nervously. "Good," he replied. "Just stand beside me. You do not have to speak unless you want to." When the event began, the stage lights were bright and unforgiving, but Alexander's voice was calm and steady as he spoke about Meridian's new Chapter 1 focused on compassion, accessibility, and rebuilding trust with the community. He paused halfway through, gesturing toward her. "This project began with a simple question," he said. "What does it mean to do good?" I found the answer in someone who reminded me that success means nothing without humanity. Miss Emily Parker. The crowd turned toward her, and for a brief second, she froze. Then she smiled, modest but genuine, and the audience applauded. Cameras flashed again, and she felt a strange mix of pride and disbelief. After the conference, as the crowd dispersed, a reporter approached. "Miss Parker, how does it feel to work so closely with Mr. Reed?" Emily hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "It feels meaningful," she said finally. "He believes in building something that lasts. That kind of leadership inspires people." When the interview ended, Alexander appeared at her side, his expression unreadable. "You handled that perfectly," he said quietly. "I meant every word," she replied. "So did I," he said, his gaze holding hers a moment too long. That evening, as the company celebrated the project's success with a small reception, Emily tried to blend into the background, chatting politely with colleagues. But her eyes kept finding Alexander across the room. When their gazes met, it was like the noise around them faded for a heartbeat. Later, as she prepared to leave, he caught up with her near the exit. "You are not staying?" he asked. "I promised Lily I would be home for dinner," she said with a soft smile. "She made macaroni herself this time." He chuckled. "Then you definitely should not miss that." As she started to go, he added, "Emily." She turned back. "Yes? I meant what I said today. You have changed this company, and maybe you have changed me too." Her heart skipped. She searched his face for meaning, but his tone was sincere, not romantic yet. There was something beneath it, something fragile. "Good night, Mr. Reed," she said quietly. "Good night, Emily," he replied. On her way home, she thought about his words, about the way his eyes had softened when he said them. It scared her how much they mattered. That night, as Lily fell asleep curled beside her, Emily stared at the ceiling, replaying the day. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine what life could be if fate was kind, if two people from different worlds could find common ground, not in wealth or power, but in understanding. But before sleep took her, she whispered to herself, "Do not dream too much." She knew life rarely gave fairy tales. Still, somewhere deep in her heart, she hoped this story might be the exception. Winter deepened as December settled over the city. The streets glittered with holiday lights, and the air carried the scent of pine and cinnamon. Inside Meridian Holdings, the atmosphere was equally bright. The community center project had reached its final stage, and the board planned a small ceremony to celebrate its completion before Christmas. For Emily, it was a whirlwind of numbers, checklists, and long nights. Yet she felt an undeniable joy in watching something she helped build finally come to life. One morning, as she reviewed the final invoices, Alexander appeared at her desk holding 2 steaming cups of coffee. "You look like you have not slept," he said with a quiet smile. "I could say the same about you," she replied. He handed her one of the cups. "Guilty, but at least I have a reason to be awake." "Deadlines?" she guessed. "No," he said softly. "Hope." The word lingered between them, simple but heavy. She looked down, unsure how to respond, pretending to focus on her spreadsheet. Later that day, they drove together to the new community center to inspect the finished work. The building stood bright against the grey sky, modern yet warm, with large windows that let in light. Children played in the courtyard, their laughter echoing in the cold air. Inside, walls were painted in cheerful colors, and the daycare area smelled faintly of crayons and fresh paint. "It is beautiful," Emily whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Alexander looked around with quiet pride. "It is because of you," he said. "You made them listen." "No," she replied, shaking her head. "You did. You gave me the chance." He smiled slightly. "Maybe it was never about giving you a chance. Maybe it was about me finally learning to see the world beyond numbers." For a moment, the world seemed still. Outside, snow began to fall lightly against the windows. She turned toward him, her eyes bright. "Thank you," she said simply, "for everything." "Do not thank me," he murmured. "Just keep being who you are." That evening, the company hosted its winter gala, a grand event to honor the project's completion. Emily arrived in a dark emerald dress, her hair softly curled, looking more confident than she felt. The ballroom sparkled with gold lights, the air filled with laughter and music. When she entered, conversations paused briefly. People had grown used to seeing her beside Alexander, but tonight, something about her presence drew admiration instead of curiosity. Alexander found her near the buffet table, smiling slightly. "You clean up well," he said. "So do you," she replied with a laugh. As the evening went on, he gave a short speech thanking everyone involved in the project. "This year," he said, "we learned that success is not measured by what we build, but by who we lift in the process, and I am grateful to the person who reminded us of that truth." His eyes found hers across the room. Applause filled the hall, but Emily barely heard it. Her heart pounded as their gaze held, wordless but full of meaning. After the speeches, soft music began to play. Couples filled the dance floor, and Alexander approached her quietly. "Would you dance with me?" he asked. She hesitated, then placed her hand in his. The world around them faded into the hum of violins and laughter. He led gently, his hand steady at her back. "You have changed everything, Emily," he said quietly, "including me. Maybe you just remembered who you were," she replied. His lips curved into a faint smile. "Maybe you are right." When the song ended, they stepped apart, though neither wanted to. Outside, snow fell thicker now, blanketing the city in quiet peace. As the night drew to a close, he walked her to the door. "Merry Christmas, Emily," he said softly. "Merry Christmas, Alexander," she replied. Their eyes met one last time before she stepped into the falling snow, the glow of the lights reflecting in her eyes. For the first time in a long while, she felt that life had come full circle from an elevator that broke down to a life that finally began to rise. The first week of January arrived quietly, wrapping the city in a calm that felt almost unfamiliar after the excitement of the holidays. For Emily, it was a time of reflection. The new community center had officially opened, and her temporary position at Meridian Holdings was set to end soon. She knew she should feel content the project was complete, and she had achieved more than she ever dreamed possible, but a small ache had begun to settle in her chest. She would miss the work, the people, and most of all, Alexander. On Monday morning, she arrived early, determined to leave things in perfect order. The office was still half asleep from the long weekend. As she stacked her final reports, Alexander appeared at her desk. He looked as composed as ever, but there was something softer in his expression. "You are here early," he said. "I wanted to make sure everything was ready for the next team," she replied with a smile. "They will have big shoes to fill," he said quietly. "Emily, I wanted to talk to you before the day gets too busy." He motioned toward his office. Inside, the morning light filtered through the tall windows, casting long golden lines across the floor. "Your contract officially ends this Friday," he began, "but I do not want that to be the end." She blinked. "What do you mean?" "I want you to stay," he said simply. "Permanently. You have proven yourself more than capable. I would like you to lead the Community Initiatives Department." Her breath caught. "Me? Lead a department?" "Yes," he replied. "You built its foundation. No one else understands its purpose the way you do." For a moment, she was speechless. "Alexander, I do not know what to say." "Say yes," he said, smiling faintly, "and maybe think about what you want next for you and for Lily." Her eyes filled with emotion. "Thank you. You do not know what this means to us." "I think I do," he said softly. "I remember what it is like to start over." She met his gaze, and for a heartbeat, everything else disappeared: the office, the city outside, even time itself. She wanted to say more, but before she could, his assistant knocked on the door. "Mr. Reed, the investors from Chicago are here." He straightened slightly. "Tell them I will be there in 5 minutes." When she left, he turned back to Emily. "Think about it. You do not have to decide right now." "I do not need to think," she said quietly. "I would be honored." His smile deepened, genuine and proud. "Then it is settled." The week passed quickly after that. On Friday afternoon, the office gathered for a small celebration. There were cupcakes, laughter, and a rare sense of warmth in the air. Alexander gave a short toast, thanking everyone for their work. When it was over, he walked her to the elevator, just as he had on that very first day. "Do you remember this?" he asked. She laughed softly. "How could I forget? You looked like you wanted to be anywhere else." "And you looked terrified," he said with a grin. "I was," she admitted. "But now I am not." "Good," he said quietly. The elevator dinged open, and she turned to face him. "I guess this is where it all started," she said. "And maybe," he replied, "where something new begins." The doors closed slowly between them, but the smile on her face lingered long after she reached the lobby. That night, as she tucked Lily into bed, her daughter asked sleepily, "Mommy, are you happy now?" Emily brushed a strand of hair from her little girl's forehead and whispered, "Yes, sweetheart, I think I finally am." Outside, snow drifted softly under the streetlights, and in the quiet of that moment, Emily Parker realized she had not just changed her life, she had found her place in the world, and the unexpected friendship that had guided her there was only the beginning of something far greater. Spring arrived slowly that year, soft and golden, as if the city itself had decided to exhale after a long winter. For Emily, life had settled into a rhythm she had never dared to dream of. Her mornings began with the sound of Lily's laughter and the smell of coffee in their small but cozy apartment. Her days were spent at Meridian Holdings, leading the Community Initiatives Department she had helped create from the ground up. It was fulfilling work helping people who had once stood where she stood, rebuilding lives with dignity and hope. Yet even as her career blossomed, it was the quiet moments she treasured most: the evenings when Alexander would stop by her office, not as her boss but as a friend, sometimes bringing her tea instead of coffee, sometimes just standing by the window with her, watching the city lights. Their connection had grown in the spaces between words, steady and patient, like something that did not need to be defined to be understood. One evening, after a long day of meetings, Alexander appeared at her door. "Walk with me," he said simply. They stepped outside into the crisp air. The city glowed beneath them, alive and endless. They ended up at the community center, now bustling with life, children playing basketball, parents chatting near the playground, laughter echoing against the walls she had once seen only as blueprints. "It is strange," she said softly. "Every time I come here, it feels like the first time." "Because it reminds you why you started," he replied. She looked at him, her expression thoughtful. "You changed a lot since then," she said. "You have too," he replied with a quiet smile. "But I think we both just became who we were meant to be." They walked inside, stopping by the daycare room where volunteers were reading stories to a small group of children. Through the glass, Emily spotted Lily sitting cross-legged, listening intently, her eyes wide with wonder. Alexander followed her gaze and smiled. "She has your determination," he said. "She has your patience," she replied. He looked at her for a long moment, the noise of the world fading around them. "Do you ever think about that day?" he asked softly. "The elevator?" She laughed quietly. "Every time I get into one." "So do I," he said. "Funny how something so inconvenient could change everything." She nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "Maybe fate has strange timing." "Or maybe," he said, "it knows exactly what it is doing." Outside, the sun began to set, spilling warm light across the courtyard. They stood side by side, watching as children chased each other in the fading glow. "You know," she said after a while, "when I first met you, I thought you were the kind of man who would never look twice at someone like me." "And now?" he asked gently. She smiled. "Now I know you are the kind of man who listens when no one else does." He looked down at her, a faint smile touching his lips. "And you are the kind of woman who reminded me what it means to be human." Silence settled comfortably between them as the first stars appeared in the sky. He turned toward her, his voice low. "Whatever happens from here, Emily, I want you to know something. You changed my life, not because you worked for me, but because you taught me to care again." Her eyes softened, emotion catching in her throat. "You changed mine too," she said. "You reminded me that kindness still matters." The streetlights flickered on, casting their reflections across the glass walls of the building that had once been just an idea. Lily ran out to them, waving a drawing in her hand. "Mommy, look, I drew our home." Emily took the paper, smiling through tears. "It is perfect, sweetheart." Alexander crouched beside her, studying the picture, a small house under a bright yellow sun, 3 figures holding hands. He looked up at Emily, his eyes warm. "She sees the world the way you do," he said softly. Emily glanced down at the drawing, then at him, and whispered, "Maybe she just sees the truth." That night, as they walked home under a sky full of stars, Emily realized something profound. Sometimes, fate does not shout, it whispers, through small moments, through broken elevators, through simple acts of kindness that ripple farther than anyone expects. And in that quiet understanding, she knew that her story, their story, had never been about wealth or luck. It had been about 2 souls learning, in their own imperfect ways, what it truly means to be human. In a world where compassion meets destiny, this emotional journey tells the story of Emily Parker, a single mother whose life changes forever after a chance encounter with Alexander Reed, a powerful CEO. Through courage, kindness, and resilience, she transforms from a struggling parent into a voice of hope, reminding us what it means to be human. Blending heartwarming drama and cinematic emotion, this tale stands among the most inspiring millionaire stories ever told. It is not about wealth, but the rediscovery of humanity within power. As Emily's path intertwines with Alexander's, every act of empathy, every decision, and every sacrifice adds depth to one of the most unforgettable millionaire stories of modern storytelling. From hardship to healing, the narrative captures love, dignity, and justice in their purest forms. For audiences who seek depth and redemption, this moving saga of 2 souls connected by fate will remain one of the most soul-stirring millionaire stories that illuminate the beauty of kindness over ambition, an unforgettable testament that behind every fortune lies a heart waiting to remember what truly matters. This is not just another drama, it is one of those rare millionaire stories that linger long after the final word fades, reminding every listener that the richest people are those who never forget how to care.